You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's May the 8th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, found here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. Good morning, Rev Kelly. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good Monday morning. I'm great. It's so sunny today.
Yeah, I know, eh? I'm looking out there and I can see the sun. At one time it was in my eyes, so
Yeah.
I'm glad it just sort of moved, but it's great to see it out there, that's for sure.
How was your weekend?
Good. It was productive, very productive. Saturday, I went to Toronto, down to Queen's Park. I don't know whether they're going to call it King's Park or not now, but down to Queen's Park, and they had the King's thing going on the South Lawn, but it's also the location of the annual Global Marijuana March, which is on the North Lawn of the park. So, I hemmed and hawed, and I wasn't sure, and decided that, okay, I'm going to go down. I was really concerned about the traffic, parking, getting into the place. I don't know how much they got blocked off, and the march is on a bit of a renewal, I'm going to sort of call it.
Sure.
So I had gone down there, and I saw people I knew. There was a lot smaller crowd. Like, one time we were filling the park, and this time we were just barely filling the center, if that.
Okay. So hundreds instead of thousands, you'd say?
100 instead
100 people?
instead of 25,000, correct. Yeah, it's about 150 people, I guess. There's 7 vendors, booths that were set up for people to buy cannabis, concentrates, clones. One of the booths even had a generator.
Wow.
So I'm not sure what was going on inside it. But
interesting.
Yeah. So so I got to see some people, like I said, who I had known for quite a while, but hadn't seen them.
Oh, good.
And some of them, as far as 10 years ago, they were involved when I was doing Treating Yourself and doing non-cannabis shows, talking about cannabis education.
Yes.
So it was good to see Scott and Paul again. I hadn't seen them in a long time. And I got to see Naomi and talk with her. And it seemed that, and Allison Murden, and everybody seemed to have the same theme what the march should be about, even there wasn't anything official.
Yeah.
But it was legalize and regulate cannabis everywhere. Because, as you know, we report on the fact that the fellow from Singapore got hung recently.
Right.
And there's other locations where people can get the death penalty for cannabis.
Yes.
So signs were made up for the march. And just as we were about to leave, a police officer came up to me and asked me who was in charge. And I wasn't 100% sure. So he just asked me to pass the message along to people to because our march wasn't very large like in the past, that they were not going to offer us a police escort, and asked us to stay on the sidewalk instead of going on the road. There was some resistance to that in the beginning. Allison actually rode down the road with her wheelchair, and eventually people got her to talk her into coming in onto the sidewalk, and we actually passed a lot of people going the other direction. So on the sidewalk, so we're still interacting with people. We just weren't blocking the road and disrupting the traffic, and we didn't have the police to protect us. And probably about halfway through, they came along, and about 4 of them came along, and we've seen them in a few spots, but they weren't along protecting us as we went, right, as they have in the past.
Just keeping an eye out on you, making sure you're okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it was good. It was still good. It's sort of like I'm looking at it. It's the beginning of something old that's new again.
Sure. Well,
You know,
that's nice. That's a nice way to put it. And of course, we need to think about and advocate for legalization globally,
correct. We've
right?
got it here, but other countries don't have it, and we still
Yeah,
have laws and regulations that still need to be changed here in Canada.
that's right.
Yes, cannabis is legalized, but
That's
there's things that can be improved on, and there's no reason why people can't still go out and you know make, as they say, if they don't know you're unhappy, then they don't know. You
that's right.
have to let people know, and you can write them, and you can still go out and protest and still carry your signs and
That's right.
you know improve things. So
Support the movement in the other countries as well. Spoke to a fellow
correct.
yesterday who's in charge of legalized Nepal official, and that's what he's doing. He's working to get his country legalized for cannabis, decriminalized. So it's a thing that we can do where we can support people all around.
Exactly, and that's how I felt that we were doing, by because it's global
Yes,
marijuana market,
it really is.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's going to continue. You know,
good.
so see what happens as time goes on. So, all right, let's get into our second news story of the day. All right, and the headlines on that one says that Indigenous man sues BC over CSU raids of his cannabis store, and this is the headline comes to us from StratCan.
British Columbia. Corey Patrick Brewer, whose Tupa's joint in downtown Vernon was raided by the BC Community Safety Unit twice in 2020 for operating without a license from the province, says BC's rules for retail sales and distribution are unconstitutional.
The lawsuit filed on May 2nd by brewer and cannabis lawyer Rory also argues that both federal and provincial cannabis laws ignore First Nations Indigenous peoples' jurisdiction. The lawsuit argues that Indigenous people have a long history of cannabis use in North America, and that Section 35 of the Constitution protects an inherited right to govern the cultivation, processing, and the sale of cannabis in their territories.
It goes on to argue that the lack of
Mhm.
recognition of these argued rights has created a gray or red market to cannabis for cannabis, and that the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People also affirms that Indigenous sovereignty of cannabis production and sale.
Brewer also made similar arguments in the past. However, one Vancouver based attorney specializing in Indigenous law, Ivan Guy Larac, told media at that time that Indigenous self determination rights, as set up in the UNDRIP, are collective rights, not individual rights, as Brewer suggests.
Now, Brewer's lawyer Lori disagrees with the lawsuit, stating that the exercise of these rights in relation to cannabis, hemp, and the utilization of spirit plants, medicines, cacti, and fungi containing restricted substances is supported by these articles of UNDRIP.
Brewer is seeking the return of the cannabis products seized from his store in 2020, an order that the provincial and federal cannabis regulations are ultra vires and of no force and effect, and an order declaring the existing original Aboriginal treaty rights of Aboriginal peoples of Canada, Section 35, in relation to cannabis, hemp, fungi, and other plant medicines.
The petition notes that Brewer had a letter of support from Chief Byron Lewis of the Okanagan Indian Band, stating that Brewer had support from the OKIB to establish Tupa's joint in Vernon. Now, in addition, it references a letter from the Grand Chief Philip Stewart on behalf of the Okanagan Nation Alliance that describes hemp as part Silex, Okanagan's nation inherent right of trade and commerce. Now, the province has 21 days to respond to that petition.
Yeah. Now they say here that the issue of jurisdiction around cannabis laws and contiguous in Canada as it relates to First Nations and Indigenous authorities. Canada's Cannabis Act and regulations provide the authority to regulate the sale of cannabis in provinces and territories. Many provinces, including BC, along with the federal government, have said that their own respective cannabis regulations are laws of general application, meaning they apply to all areas in these jurisdictions, including Indigenous land. Hmm.
Right. Well, In 2020, the BC's Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth said the province does not recognize such sovereignty in regard to federal and provincial cannabis regulations, but it is hesitant to enforce the law on First Nations territory out of fear of a court challenge. Wow.
Oh, oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. Why would they be scared of a court challenge?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
why don't they recognize it?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly. With cannabis, like a number of other issues, when it comes to First Nations, our view, the province's view, is that yes, they are laws of general application, says the minister. Just as with some other issues, First Nations have said, no, these are areas of our jurisdiction. And that's both at the provincial level and at the federal level.
He's on his land, right? They're on sovereign
Yeah.
land.
Yeah,
How
as
is
far as
that
I know.
they
Yeah.
don't have any jurisdiction on sovereign land like that? That's their
And that's what
land.
yeah, and that's what he's trying to do.
Jesus. Many Indigenous communities in Canada have disputed this interpretation, saying that they have the right to manage cannabis as they see fit, either restricting it or regulating it. Absolutely. Each different reserve does. Now, the Oisaboisan, I probably said that wrong, and I'm so sorry, Indian band first passed a moratorium against any cannabis stores in the community in 2019. The community then adopted their own Osoyoos Indian band cannabis bylaw in 2020, citing Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982, which recognizes and affirms the existing Aboriginal self government and treaty rights of the Aboriginal people of Canada. Wow.
Yeah, the OIB's corporate plan for 2018-2022 includes their intention to open a new legal cannabis growing facility and new cannabis retail outlets. The bands licensed their first retailer in September of 22, Brewers, Timex, and Wellness.
How did the province rate them? They have all of the right. They have band council permission. This makes no sense
Yeah,
at all. They're going to lose.
yeah.
The government is going to lose here. These approaches are not unique to BC. A First Nations community in New Brunswick put a moratorium on cannabis stores in their community in 2021. A Mi'kmaq band counselor from Millbrook First Nation in Nova Scotia arrested in 2020. We've done this story before. Police raid of Indigenous
Mhm.
cannabis dispensaries is mounting a constitutional defense, arguing its right to sell cannabis on First Nations land is constitutionally protected. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with these cases out.
Yeah, it sounds like
Wow.
there's going to be more than one challenge going on here.
I
Yeah,
love it.
many First Nations community leaders argue for their own authority to manage cannabis sales and even production. Some legal experts and activists have also seen the potential to utilize the issues surrounding cannabis licensing to highlight overarching and historical jurisdictional challenges to federal and provincial laws.
Wow. Can you imagine if they did that here? Like if they went to
Yeah.
Tyendinaga or they went to Healing House or one of our places? We wouldn't be okay with that, Al. We would not be
No,
okay with
no.
that. This is
Eh,
this is
yeah, I'm just shutting that down.
yeah.
From my understanding, like I know over there in Alderville, when there's been raids in the past where there was a person who wasn't from the reserve who had a dispensary
Right.
on there.
Right. Right. And in
Um,
that sense,
my
okay,
understanding, they go to
absolutely.
band count.
Yeah. Yep. And that's who's the governor. That's who controls the area. They make the decision and they have all the rights to make their
Yeah,
decision on their land. And if you're a store like the partners that we work for, you go to the band council, you get the permission and you work on your land. That's how it works. The government of Ontario doesn't
right.
come and they have no rights to do it. So I don't know what the heck is going on in those other provinces, but I'm glad we're watching these stories.
So that's all we gotta do. Keep an eye on things. All right, up next. This comes to us from CTV News. Medical cannabis could be a complementary therapy to help fight cancer pain, according to MUHC study.
Absolutely. Medical cannabis has a complementary role to play in fighting cancer pain. It's a study from the researchers at McGill University Healthcare Center.
Yeah, it also found the use of cannabis would help reduce the total number of medications and opioids taken by patients. Boy, I love it when they get these things in the universities.
It's very clear. After 3 months, Dr. Antonio Vigano's team said they saw clinically significant reductions in pain scores in patients. These reductions persisted for a year, and the patients were able to gradually reduce their use of pain medication.
Yeah. Nevertheless, Dr. Vigano says cannabis is not an alternative to pain treatments. It is a complementary treatment. Cannabis has its own limitations, its own contradictions, and so it's not miraculous. And
Yes, according to
yeah,
him.
yeah.
It's not true. The researchers recruited 358 adult cancer patients for their study. The average age of the patient was 57. About half of them were men, and the most common cancer diagnoses were genitourinary and breast cancers, followed by bowel, lung, and blood cancers.
Those pain intensity, symptoms, and total number of medications taken were analyzed. Daily morphine use was assessed at the time of the first medical cannabis prescription, and 3, 6, 9, and 12 months later. Overall pain severity and pain relief, as well as pain interference with daily life in the previous 24 hours, was also considered.
Statistically, significant decreases were observed at 3, 6, and 9 months when it came to the intensity of average and worst pain, overall pain severity, and how pain interfered with daily life.
And Dr. Vigano said he began using medical cannabis in 2015, primarily to stimulate his patients' appetite. He realized over time that the substance also helped with pain control, possibly by relieving patients' stress and anxiety.
More than half of patients receiving cancer treatment and two-thirds of those with advanced metastatic or terminal disease experienced pain. Opiates were often prescribed, but relief is not always completely achieved.
Sure. Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Exactly. Dr. Vigano goes on to say there are always patients who don't fully respond to conventional treatments or who have side effects. So, for these patients, we need to find something complementary to improve pain control and also quality of life.
Still, some patients are hesitant when it comes to adding medical cannabis to their treatment. It's a hesitancy that Dr. Viago says he encounters more often in older patients, while younger ones are a little more familiar with the substance.
Yeah, the most important thing is to tell our patients that our goal is to control the symptoms, not to get them high. He says when there's a high for us, it's a side effect. So we always use the lowest effective dose.
Just saying that there's a balance of THC and CBD, that we're using this most effective, and the study was
Mhm.
published in a medical journal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's good to see that these things come out. You and I and others have been saying it for a while, but it's good when you see it come out in a study, so that those doctors or the people who are on the no side can see these things.
Sure.
And we got to keep saying it. We got to keep repeating it over and over again. Until people see it for themselves. So, all right, on to our next story. And this one comes to us from the medical press. Case report: magic mushrooms may induce lasting improvements in color blind vision.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Researchers at the
Yeah.
Department of Psychiatry and Psychology Center of Behavioral Health Neurological Institute at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio have authored a case report on the positive effects of psilocybin on color blindness.
Published in the journal Drug Science, Policy, and Law, the researchers highlight some implications surrounding a single reported vision improvement self study by a colleague and cite other previous reports illustrating a need to understand better how these psychedelics could be used in therapeutic settings.
Past reports have indicated that people with color vision deficiency, usually referred to as color blindness, experience better color vision after using lysergic acid, well, LSD, or psilocybin magic mushrooms. There's a lack of scientific evidence for these claims, as researching the effects of these drugs has been highly restricted.
Yeah. Color vision depends on a cluster of three types of photoreceptors known as cones: red, green, and blue, sensing retinal photoreceptors with light-sensitive pigments. If one or more of these pigments is missing, the result is color blindness, red and green, which results in difficulties distinguishing between red and green is typically an inherited condition caused by X chromosome linked recession mutations in genes coding for components of cones. It is also the most common type of CVD, occurring in 8% of men and in 0.5% of women.
So people with color blindness can only perceive about 10% of the hues. Life with color blindness can be difficult. Aside from making the occasional wardrobe color mistake, it can make maps and infographics indecipherable, distinguish the ripeness of fruits and freshness of meats in the fridge, and can restrict career choices where color sight is an advantage or required, such as an airplane pilot, graphic artist, and textile and paint related jobs. Never thought of
Yeah,
that.
there's no treat. Yeah, really, eh? You could just imagine that. Being an airplane pilot
Yeah.
and being colorblind. Yeah, that's not good. Not good at all. There is no treatment to correct color blindness, although there are some tempted workarounds. One of the more accessible options for specific types of color blindness is glasses with special lenses, like the ones made by Enchroma, which selectively filter out wavelengths of light at the point where red and green frequencies overlap for a person with color blindness, making the two distinct.
Hmm. In the current case, a subject with red green CVD self administered this test to quantify the degree and duration of color vision improvement after using 5 grams of dried psilocybin magic mushrooms. Self reported test data from the subject revealed partial improvement in CBD, peaking at 8 days and persisting for at least 16 days post psilocybin administration. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Hey, you always think of psychedelics, and you see the pictures with the aurora around people.
Yeah, yeah,
The colors, right? Here you
right.
go. In previous experience that led to the more controlled self-experiment, the subject reported using MDMA once, psilocybin mushrooms twice, oral LSD 5 times, and inhaling DMT 7 times. And after these prior experiences of psychedelic use, the subject had noted improvement in color vision persisting for months.
Ooh, that's a good recipe for a good weekend.
Yes.
Right? Before mushroom ingestion, the subject self administered the test a series of graphics composed of a mosaic of dots varying in color, hue, and size. The card of the tests were designed to hide test images from someone with color blindness that would be clearly visible to someone with color vision. For example, a graphic of red and green dots may have the number 3 composed of only red dots, clearly apparent to most, but invisible to the colorblind individual.
Yeah, it would be, eh? During this baseline test, the subject reported scoring 14 on plates 1 to 21, indicating that mild green blindness with an additional set of 4 cards indicating I can't get that word.
Mhm.
A version of CBD that makes green look more reds. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the
Yeah.
subject reported intensification of colors under the acute effects of psilocybin. The score showed only slight improvement, 15 at 12 hours post administration. By 24 hours post mushroom administration, the score reached 18, one above the cutoff of 17 required for the test for classification of normal color vision. The score peaked at 19 on day 8 and was still tuned into the range of normal vision 4 months later.
Wow. Really? It's
Holy
good. Yeah.
jeepers.
Yeah. Now, this last line, I'll just finish off after this
Sure.
last line and say the research suggested it is likely that psychedelic induced visual ph- phonomia result primarily from alterations in brain activity rather than their effects on the retina and peripheral eye. Based on the time delay between psilocybin and color vision, the mushrooms may have catalyzed a learning process around color interpretation, possibly altering the conductivity between visual regions. Wow.
Incredible.
It's a long story. We're only halfway through it.
Yeah, it's
But
incredible.
yeah, for people who are dealing with this, knowing that they can just, you know, maybe get their color vision back by using psychedelics.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that's
It's
a good
amazing.
that's good. That's good news. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, that's good news. This our next story here is interesting. Headline on it says that cannabis use disorder linked to increased schizophrenia risks in males, and this comes from neuroscience.
Right. And the study analyzed health record data over 6 million people in Denmark. They discovered a strong association between cannabis use disorder and schizophrenia. 30% of cases of schizophrenia among men aged 21 to 30 may be prevented by treating cannabis use disorder. Or maybe they would be treated by changing the type of cannabis that they're using that would maybe giving them the psychosis. Just a thought. Are you frozen, Al? Are you there? Should I keep going? I'm going to keep going.
I'm frozen, and you know what? I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
All right, you keep going. Keep
Oh,
going. You hear
okay.
me?
Effective treatment for both conditions are making it imperative to expand prevention, screening,
All
and
right, you got
treatment
me?
for
All right.
people who experience mental
Oh,
illnesses
where'd it go?
associated with cannabis use. Check it in. Nope. Key facts: a study led by researchers at the National Institute on Drug Abuse and Mental Health
A
Services in the
study led
Capital
by
Region.
researchers at the National
I'm going to take a pause, Al. Are you there? Are you there?
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello? Hello?
Okay. Okay. You ready? Start with the key facts.
Go ahead. A study led by researchers at the National Institute of Drug Abuse and Mental Health Services in the Capital Region of Denmark found that young men with cannabis use disorder are at a higher risk of developing schizophrenia.
Absolutely. The study analyzed detailed the health records data spanning 5 decades and representing more than 6 million people in Denmark to estimate the fraction of schizophrenic cases that could be attributed to cannabis use disorder on the population level.
The association between cannabis use disorder and schizophrenia was found to be much stronger among young men. As many as 30% of cases of schizophrenia aged men from the age of 21 to 30 might have been prevented by cancer. Oh.
Young men with cannabis use disorder have an increased risk of developing schizophrenia, according to the study led by the researchers at Mental Health Services in the Capital Region of Denmark and the National Institute of Drug
Are
Abuse
you there?
and at the National Institutes of Health.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Should we try going to a break? Should we try going to a
Can
break?
you hear me?
Want to try going to a break?
Yeah, we'll go to a break. Yes. Come on. There we go. There we go. Maybe it was just the story. I don't know.
Could have been the story. Could have been that story.
It
I can
could have
see you
been
now.
It could have been just the story.
The
You can
gremlins
see
didn't
me
like
now
it.
and you can hear me now, right?
I can hear you now and see you now. It was just the
The
story.
gremlins didn't like it. It was just the story. You know,
Wow.
maybe there was. See, that's something that has been like I realized it was a big number and all that stuff, but it's something that has always been said about cannabis causes schizophrenia. When a lot of people say it's the opposite, where people who are already predispositioned shouldn't be using
It's a
cannabis.
trigger. It just triggers it because it just triggers the psychosis there. That's all it is. It doesn't cause it. Anybody, you're born with schizophrenia. You can't get it from cannabis, but it can trigger it. Anything can trigger it. A trauma, being
Anything
hit
we
by a
trigger.
car, a murder, watching something like it can, anything can trigger it. Cannabis being one of those things. But people with schizophrenia are using different cannabinoids than the THC for different things like calm, the bliss
Mhm.
molecule, and it helps people with schizophrenia, but just maybe not the terpenes that are sending them off into psychosis.
Yeah, and there was something quite a while ago that came out that I can't remember exactly how it went, but they talked about the fact that cannabis use has increased over the years, but the number of people with schizophrenia hasn't increased to match those numbers.
Sure, sure, sure,
So, yeah. All right. What do you say? We gonna go to break? Sounds
sure,
good. Now
sure.
that I'm back and,
Yeah,
and we can talk.
right.
All right. Off to the break we go. Time to hear from those who help us inform our viewers. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBGTV broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
Are you watching television on Roku, Fire, maybe an Apple TV or even Chromecast? If you are, then download the Boxcast app and search for CBGTV.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Legacy 420 have an awesome array of cannabis-infused beverages, from pop to Nature's Nectar's teas, all in amazing flavors. What a selection! We even have a delicious mango-infused juice, and let me tell you, it's delicious.
Everything is infused in-house, so we buy our syrup from, the same place where everybody else buys their syrup for their pop, and the infusion is done in the lab. It's all canned here, labeled here, produced 100% on Tyndonega.
We have two lines of drinks. One is called our Nature's Nectar. That was our original line that we came out with. And then we also have a line under the Ready brand. We have them in 10 milligrams, 30 milligram, and 60 milligram cans.
What a great selection for a get-together with friends or after a long day. Remember, if you want to wet your whistle with on-site lab-tested products, come see your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Hey, we're back. Back for a medication session, and it's ready to bring you out. 5 more stories? Think we can get them all in, Rev Kelly?
You sure can.
All right. Here we go with our first one. According to High Times, headline says study shows LSD increases brain connections. Kelly, LSD and color blindness, and now LSD increasing brain connections.
I'm going to go get some now. A new study published last month examined the influence of LSD on brain connections, yielding some enlightening results.
The study, published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology, found that the drug not only increases the strength of certain brain connections, but weakens other connections at the same time, according to the digest of the study in Psychedelic Spotlight.
In the abstract of the study, the authors wrote that psychedelics have emerged as promising candidate treatments for various psychiatric conditions, and given their clinical potential, there is a need to identify biomarkers that underlie their effects.
Here, we investigate the neutral mechanisms of LSD using regression dynamic causal modeling, a novel technique that assesses whole brain affective connectivity during resting state functional magnetic resonance imaging, they wrote.
Now, the study involved 45 participants who administered, sorry, jumped ahead, 100, I'm not sure what that is, something
Neither do
G
I.
of LSD and a placebo and 2 testing of state fMRI sessions. It's a really long quote here from, I don't know if you
Yeah,
have this from.
yeah. We compared EC against whole brain functional connectivity using classical statistics and machine learning methods. Multivariate analyses of EC parameters reveal predominantly stronger interregional connectivity and reduced self-inhibited under LSD compared to placebo, with the notable exception of weakened interregional connectivity and increased self-inhibition in optical brain regions, as well as subcortical regions, the authors wrote. Together, these findings suggest that LSD, perhaps the excitation inhibition balance of the brain, notably whole brain EC, did not only provide additional mechanistic insight into the effects of LSD on this balance of the brain, but EC also collaborated with global subjective effects of LSD and discriminated experimental conditions in a machine learning based analysis with high accuracy of 91%, highlighting the potential of using whole brain EC to decode or predict subjective effects of LSD in the future. Boy, Kelly, that was a long quote with you're welcome.
The shifting attitudes towards psychedelics has led to a reassessment of anti drug laws and medical treatments. As the authors of the study said, psilocybin and LSD have emerged as promising new treatment candidates for a variety of psychiatric conditions, including substance dependence, major depression, anxiety disorders, and adjustment disorders.
So, what did they learn? Per Psychedelic Spotlight, the study found that LSD enhances connectivity across widespread brain networks, specifically that LSD increased integration between the visual processing center of the brain and the region involved in self-awareness and introspection. Wow.
By strengthening connections between these brain regions, LSD appears to allow new creative associations and altered states of consciousness. What?
Yeah. However, researchers also found there are weaker connections in certain areas of the occipital cortex, putamen, and cerebellum. The study revealed that LSD alters the brain's connectivity, impacting the strength of communication between various regions. The intensities of these altered connections corroborated with the psychological experiences reported by participants, indicating that the perceptual effects of LSD are rooted in the drug's modulation of interregional brain signaling. The results suggest LSD psychedelic effects arise from changes in the brain's functional organization, not localized activation. In other words, LSD affects the way different regions of the brain communicate with each other.
Okay. Wow. Using sophisticated neuroimaging techniques, the researchers probed the inner workings of the resting brain. Functional connectivity analysis tracked the coordination of activity across the brain regions, revealing how they form an integrated network, even in the absence of focused thought or external stimuli. A statistical technique called partial least squares correlation analysis identified relationships between brain networks and psychological states, illuminating the neural foundations of our waking consciousness. Through these innovative analytical approaches, the study yielded fresh insights into the brain's intrinsic dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was never thinking about that 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No. All right, to our next story. This one says, new research, cannabis effective in managing myofascial pelvic pain. More studies, more educational news.
It's a health condition involving pelvic pain that is often described by sufferers as short, tight, tender pelvic floor muscles that can include palpable nodules or trigger points.
With this, while it's unclear how many people around the world suffer from the condition, it is estimated that 22 to 94% of cases of chronic pelvic pain involve myofascial pain. Chronic
Chronic.
pain
Sorry.
chronic pain is one of the most common genealogical conditions around the planet.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
The treatment for this myofascial pelvic pain may vary from patient to patient, with many patients relying on their own regimens for treatment.
Oh, I'm sure it does affect, just like other conditions can affect people different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, cannabis is a popular medicine for sufferers, and according to a recent study in Canada, there's good reason to incorporate it into treatment strategies. Below is more information about it via a news release from Normal.
So it's a significant percentage of women suffering from the myofascial pelvic pain, and they acknowledge that using cannabis and or cannabis products as a way to effectively mitigate their symptoms. And that's according to data published in the European Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Wow.
Yeah. Canadian investigators surveyed 135 female patients with MPP, 57% of whom acknowledged using cannabis.
Among cannabis consumers, 79% said they used cannabis products to treat their pelvic pain. Nearly 80% of these respondents said that they began using cannabis because conventional treatments were ineffective.
Nearly half of the consumers said that they used cannabis daily, and more than half did so via inhalation. On a scale of 0 to 10, 69% of the users rated the effectiveness of cannabis as a 7 or higher at relieving pelvic pain. Among non-users, 64% said that they would be willing to try cannabis as an option to treat pelvic pain. You got numbers like that.
Huge. Huge.
Yeah.
The survey's findings are consistent with those of prior studies, finding that an increasing percentage of patients with pelvic pain are accessing either cannabis or cannabis products, and that those patients who do are consuming fewer opiates.
Yeah, there's a go. There we go again with another one saying the same thing. Fewer opiates, fewer opiates. Like,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. And that's that's something that people have to know. They have a choice. Okay, now I can understand someone going in for surgery, not wanting to smoke joints as a way to relieve the pain from surgery, that they might need the opiates. That's understandable.
Okay.
But it shouldn't be the first thing for any little pain.
Yeah.
Cannabis is it,
No. Yeah.
right? All right, on to our next story. Headline says Thailand's cannabis sellers say U.S. growers are eating their lunch.
Oh. Nearly a year after
Comes to
Thailand.
now.
Decriminalized cannabis amid promises of an economic bonanza, Thai growers and sellers say they are being undercut by illegal imports from the United States that sell for a fraction of the price of homegrown buds. Are you
Oh,
frozen?
can
Are
you
you
hear
there,
me?
Al? I can hear you.
I got my. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thailand struck cannabis from its list of narcotics in June of 2022. And but they say that Thailand's parliament has yet to pass a long-awaited cannabis bill, leaving the regulatory framework for the industry in limbo.
Thailand's parliament has yet to pass a long awaited cannabis bill, leaving the regulatory framework for the industry in limbo. Local businesses say foreign money is filling the gap, with many dispensaries across the country pushing low cost cannabis imported illegally from the US.
Foreign brokers are approaching local dispensaries to hawk cheap smuggled cannabis that is untaxed, then sold at 2 to 5 times its original price, according to local cannabis entrepreneurs.
A decent locally grown strain goes for 300 baht, which is $9 per gram, but imports are only $4.50 or $5.30 per gram. And that's from a cannabis entrepreneur with several licensed dispensaries in Bangkok.
Each day we have brokers, both Thais and other nationalities. This is definitely a multinational business coming into our shops trying to sell us imported cannabis, but we turn them all down.
Praya told brokers that they have told him the product is smuggling in furniture or fruit or vegetable containers. So when customs scan it, they can't tell that it's weed.
Under the Thai law, recreational cannabis use is still theoretically illegal. However, enforcement is patchy, and cannabis shops and stalls are found on practically every other street corner in Thailand's major towns and cities. Gee, that sounds like it's tolerated.
Look at that! Look at that picture of the Hulk, and it's a giant Hulk outside the store. Coffee shop for
Oh
cannabis
yeah,
all over the place. That's incredible. That's what it looks like
yeah,
in
yeah.
Thailand. Wow. As tourists flood into Thailand to enjoy the relaxed atmosphere towards recreational cannabis use, Praya worries that Thai businesses are missing out on the booming demand.
At the end of the day, my customers care more about the potency of the THC content rather than the origins of the weed. He said, however, saying U.S. strains can be higher in THC, that the compound that gives the higher. Yeah.
Saying we need to protect the domestic market and support Thai growers and farmers. But the party which pushed decriminalization blames corrupt officials for the flood of illegal imports, and political opportunism ahead of general elections on Sunday for the negative headlines about cannabis reform.
There's always there's always a law in place to deal with imported illegal imports, but the people supposed to be in charge fail to enforce it, namely officers from customs and agricultural departments, according to the party member Supacha, who's leading the defense of the reforms.
In the long term, we need to pass the Cannabis Act so there will be specific law to tackle this specific issue of weed smuggling.
Now, he noted that the Thai Chambers of Commerce estimated the cannabis industry last year generated more than 40 million paying, which is $1.2 million US for the local economy. But I think it's fair to say it's really in the hundreds of billions of paying.
Wow. Look at that
The
other
old
photo. That
weed
the
man.
old weed man. And look, it's near decrepit buildings, but they've spent so much money on this big sign to celebrate their world. And it's called medical, is what it says. Medical. Interesting. Um,
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
for the many local players competing with foreign money, the economic benefits are hard to see.
Yeah, one cannabis veteran dealer turned legal entrepreneur said he invested heavily in making his own soils and fertilizers, only to find that his cannabis is too expensive for a market filled with cheap imports. Many Thai growers have turned to cannabis horticultural, trying to master their skills. Who had, according to Squid Roll Record, who has used an alias over his long career selling cannabis. Well, I can see that being an alias name. Squid Roll.
Yes. Squid. Oh my goodness. Well, this is a long article. Do you want to keep
It
reading?
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Just
shut her
maybe
down. Yeah.
close that up. But
Yeah, you can,
it's interesting. They're having the same difficulties that other places are having as they move towards progress.
yeah, and like they just basically said it's legal, and they gave away 1 million seeds, and on, and they just haven't passed their actual law yet. Like,
Right.
it's
Interesting. Really
surprising.
interesting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, on to our next headline. This one comes to us from Mississauga. Here are the first applications for cannabis stores in Mississauga.
Yeah, it can now legally open. It didn't take long for prospective business owners to apply for their license.
Yeah, the first shops opened in Ontario back in April 1st of 2019, but the city of Mississauga who opted out.
So as of May 2nd, there were 5 applications for cannabis shops in Mississauga, 1 entering the public notice phase. That's according to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Oops, it jumped ahead. Which is responsible, of course, for regulating.
Yeah. With the city of Mississauga joining the regulated market, the AGCO is ready to handle the expected increase in new applications for cannabis retail store authorizations, according to an AGCO blog.
One of the concerns around legal cannabis shops is too many popping up in one area of the city. But in an Instagram interview, Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie told the publisher that the city doesn't have any control over potential clustering.
That's what we've been fighting for 5 years, she says. The provincial government hasn't given that kind of control to any city, so they won't be giving it to Mississauga, she added. Nope.
Nope. And she feels clustering won't be a huge issue given the experience in other municipalities, saying even if it does cluster initially, it tends to correct itself over a short period of time.
Oh, I've heard that line said many times, and it does. She expects that if a large number of cannabis stores open in one area, they will thin out over time. Yep. And so far, looking at the AGCO map showing where applicants have applied to open a shop, there aren't too many in one area of the city yet.
Got Applewood Hills Plaza, Applewood Village Plaza, so maybe different places. The Applewoods.
Yeah, they are actually. I lived in Mississauga for close to 20 years. So yeah, Applewood and Clarkson, completely 2 different areas. Sheridan Park, Dundas. It's towards the Clarkson area, but Southdown Road and Truscott would be south or quite south of Dundas Street. So yeah, they're not clustered.
No.
Actually, my doctor used to be in Clarkson. So
There's 5 so far.
Yes, 5 so far. 5 so far that are heading to the city, and for people who had opted out, now they're back in. So they're starting. All right, we got one more story to go, and this one comes to us from High Times, and that says 42% of American adults use cannabis.
It's a new report called Cannabis Consumers in America 2023 Part 1, and it was recently released by New Frontier Data on May 2nd. The study analyzes a wide variety of trends and demographics of the modern cannabis consumer.
Yeah, according to New Frontier Data CEO Gary Allen, more than 40% of adults have used cannabis and say they will use it again. Cannabis consumers are diverse, with users spread across age groups, genders, economic brackets, and political affiliations, Allen says in a new press release. With 42% of U.S. adults having used cannabis and likely to do so again, and another 15% expressing interest in trying cannabis in the future. Acceptance and receptiveness continues to grow, creating mass opportunities in both new and emerging markets.
The study's sample size included 5,534 participants, and it was broken down into 4,358 cannabis consumers and 1,176 non-cannabis consumers who were surveyed in Q1 of 2023.
The survey found that 37% of the U.S. adults are considered to be current consumers who either consume cannabis annually and plan to do so in the future, while 30% of Americans have never used cannabis and don't intend to. Additionally, 15% of Americans have never tried cannabis but are interested in doing so, and 13% are former consumers who no longer partake.
New Frontier Data also published a 2022 analysis of Americans' consumers. In comparison, the number of current consumers increased from 39% in 2022 to 42% in 2023. For those who have never used cannabis and don't intend to, the number dropped from 34% in 2022 to 30% in 2023.
Now, the study also reviews results from participants of different age ranges, being asked about their past months of cannabis use between 2017 and 2021. Since 2017, the percentage of adults between 18 and 20 has decreased by 8%, increased by 20% for those 21 to 25. Some of the biggest increases in that 4-year period include adults ages 65 plus, with a 96% increase, and adults ages 40 to 44 with a 64% increase. Across the board, all age groups increased significantly with the exception of the 18 and 20-year-olds.
Wow.
There you go.
Everybody's doing it, Al. Everybody's
doing it. Everybody's doing it, but the 18 and 20, the young ones.
Yeah.
The numbers are coming down, and that's what they're going to get access to it.
Nope.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Well, that's incredible. What a great article.
Yeah.
To end off.
Yeah.
Bravo,
There's
bravo.
lots. There's more there, but we don't have more time.
Nope.
And most of these stories, just so everybody knows, they're over on our Facebook page, Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, and you can find them and read them in their entirety while you are there.
Woohoo!
Well, what's up this week?
It's going to be sunny. I'm going to go outside.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good. I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're going to go outside.
All right. From the Legacy420.com news desk, that's our news for today. We hope you found it educational and informative. Thanks to Legacy 420 and the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, as well as to our viewers. Catch the news next Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News broadcast with Cindy and Glenn Thursday at 10 p.m. See you all then. Bye-bye. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBG TV, broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.